Buenos dias, internet bikers. This is a video about my 5-day adventure to a MotoGP race weekend, and it's a special one because of two things. First, I had the fortune of my brother's company for the whole weekend, which is massive considering he lives thousands of miles away in a completely different continent. And second, it's probably going to be the only time I post a single video for a long road trip as it gets too difficult to edit. Next time, I'll just split it up into several videos instead. Thursday. This road trip started on a Thursday and we had 550 kilometers or 345 miles ahead of us from my home near Madrid to our hotel somewhere in southwestern Spain, close to Jerez de la Frontera, where the 2023 MotoGP Spanish Grand Prix was held. As you can see on screen, we took two bikes. I rode my Triumph Tiger 900 GT Pro and my brother decided to take the Royal Enfield Hunter 350. So we can also consider this trip a successful long-distance test for the Indian thumbprint. The first part of the ride was on a highway, but about 100 miles into the trip we took a small detour to one of the most interesting little towns in central Spain called Consuegra. As you can see by now, its main draw is a hill that is dotted with 12 windmills that have stood there for several centuries. Their main claim to fame is not just how imposing they look, but also that they're said to be the inspiration behind the foes that Don Quixote de la Mancha famously does battle with in his epic adventure. We also stopped to take a few pictures in the open fields outside of the town to take in the scenery, and then it was time for more highway miles. Anyhow, just to have some fun, we took a secondary road that also had something I don't remember seeing anywhere else in Spain. If you look to the sides, you'll see that the whole area is fenced off, and the reason is that this area is inhabited by the Iberian lynx, which has been one of the most endangered species of mammals in the world for some time now. The fences are there to ensure they don't become roadkill, which has unfortunately happened too many times already. Side note, does your country have these runoff areas for trucks that lose their brakes? We have them in almost every mountain road here in Spain, but I don't remember seeing them elsewhere. So after riding all day, we finally made it to our hotel, where we were able to rest and be ready to enjoy the race weekend. Oh yeah, this is how my brother is looking after 12 hours riding the Hunter. Is it going well? See, he's happy, he's enjoying it. And this is the setup, by the way. We got a tank bag. It's with a magnet, and we got one of these straps just in case. And then we also have the phone mount over here. We'll talk about that later. All right, guys. It's time to check in. Friday. Day 2, and the plan was to get to the racetrack early. This huge parking lot feels very empty, but I promise it's gonna get busier and busier as the days go by. Alright, I've never been to a race weekend before, but it turned out to be very similar in my mind to a music festival, with its souvenir shops ready to peddle all the official merchandise from all the participating teams and riders. Very eye-catching at first glance, but quickly you realize that all the shops are selling the same items, so the novelty wears off fast. As for the GP itself, there are 3 motorcycle categories, which are Moto 3 for 250cc, Moto 2 for 765cc, and MotoGP for 1000cc, also known as liter bikes. There's an agenda in place with different activities for each of the 3 days, and day 1, or Friday, is meant for free practice runs. So let's put those listening skills to use. Here's what each of the 3 categories sounds like. Moto 3. Moto 2. MotoGP. One thing that all ticket holders can do on Friday is to roam freely on all the stands, regardless of which ones your assigned seat is for. Our tickets were not for the stand on the main straight, but that's the reason why I have video from that section for the practice rounds. Of course, we took advantage of this free access to investigate the track, and that's how we found a few famous corners dedicated to retired drivers. And just like that, day 1 of the GP was over as far as racing was concerned, but it was still early, so we managed to do some more sightseeing.
Everyone is going to Jerez, but we're going to Arcos because I mean it's tiring, and we're gonna check something alternative, let's say. All right.
Arcos de la Frontera is the typical white town from Spain's southern region of Andalusia, with the steep streets leading to a castle or church and great views of the surrounding landscape. At this point, it was time to head back to the hotel, and in this ride, we started to see the continuous trickle of bikes coming into the area. Many people don't care about missing the Friday practice runs and prefer to start their race weekend on Saturday. And even more people only care about the race itself, meaning that Sunday is the only day when everyone is really at the track. But I'll illustrate this on screen as the video moves forward. Saturday. This is day 2 of the race weekend, even though for us it's day 3 of the trip. Here I have to say that as race weekend rookies, we only made the decision to attend a few months before race day, and that meant all the decently priced hotels were booked by when we started looking. Our two only options were to break the bank to get a room in Jerez or to stay 1 hour away in a random town, and naturally we took option 2. I say this because the result of that decision is that we had to do a good 40 miles from the hotel to the track. Fortunately, the road was very entertaining, as you can see on screen right now. So things start to get busier on Saturday, and the parking lot has a lot more bikes now. Unlike the day before, on Saturday we're restricted to the stand where our seats are located, but there's still plenty of room to move around. The agenda for Saturday includes the qualifying runs for each of the 3 categories, and the new addition to the format, which is the sprint race for the MotoGP guys. But before the qualifying rounds, we had time to investigate another corner of the circuit, the fan zone. There are more souvenir shops, restaurants, and even a stage for concerts where we didn't get to stick around for because of the distance to our hotel. And then the real action began with the actual qualifying, which we watched from beginning to end. Since we already heard them on qualifying, which category do you think this is? Let me know in the comments because I honestly have no clue. Like I said before, Saturday also had the sprint race, which we can see on screen right now. Okay, so getting out of the parking lot on Saturday was a completely different experience to Friday. I swear I'd never seen so many bikes in one place in my life before this, and Saturday is usually only at 50% capacity. Insane stuff, and this time we decided to follow the motorcycle dragon into Jerez de la Frontera. This is a medium-sized city by Spanish standards, with about 250,000 people living in it, and as you can see, it's completely taken over by the biker community for the whole weekend. In fact, it's a full-on biker party with several stages set up around the old town, ready to ensure all the bikers rock out all night long. Check these guys out. They're riding Spanish motorcycle history. These are 49cc classic bikes from Spanish brands, most of which don't exist anymore. These brands are Bultaco, Montesa, Puig, Tucson, Derby, and Osa. bikes were built between the 50s and 80s and are now collector's items. Now, unless you have a good room in the city, it becomes very difficult to enjoy the racing and the partying. So we had to make a choice and the racing won out. But if I ever make it out to another race weekend, I'll make sure I don't miss out on the partying again. Sunday. From the insane amount of motorcycle traffic for getting into the premises, it was very clear that Sunday is race day, and that the event was actually sold out despite what the previous days may have led us to believe. There was no time to waste, and we headed straight to our assigned seats, not wanting to miss any of the actual racing action. And this is the MotoGP Riders Parade. It's the main chance to see them all without helmets in a single place. This is not a motorcycle racing channel, so I won't bother with the results, but here are some good shots of each of the three categories from where I was placed. Moto 3, Moto 2,
Como un auténtico tiro, el británico no va a querer que se le escape ni mucho menos nada, porque ya sabemos que es un auténtico especialista.
MotoGP.
Esa pelusa, todo lo que veas.
And here's the race winner waving to the crowd in his celebratory victory lap. All in all, I think we had very good seats and we got to see a lot of action. After all the racing was done, it was time to head out for the final time. We figured it was too late to do another 550 Ks or 345 miles, so we decided to ride until sundown, and this was enough to see us get past Sevilla, the biggest city in this part of Spain. After that, it was lights out and time to hit the roadside hotel. Monday. The race weekend was over on Sunday, but we still had a good 250 miles in front of us. So with the view of the Spanish region of Extremadura as the background, it's time to start wrapping this up. And I'll do so by providing my thoughts on the road trip, the race weekend, and the bikes we took on this adventure. The adventure had two main sides to it. One more for my brother and one more for myself. In my case, it was mostly about the road trip. That's why I planned a few sightseeing stops along the way and why I had us come back using different roads to the ones we used to get there. The main highlight of this for me was how pleasantly surprised I was by this region, Extremadura, which is a hidden treasure when compared to other more well-known parts of Spain. I hope I get to come back soon. The other main aspect of the adventure was of course the race weekend, and this was mostly for my brother. He's a big MotoGP fan and he was over the moon the whole time we were there at the racetrack. As far as I'm concerned, it certainly was a lot more fun and entertaining than I expected. Finally, the bikes. I did the whole trip on the Triumph Tiger 900 GT Pro and I had a blast. It's a great long distance bike, but nothing's perfect, and after all the miles we put in, my behind was basically begging for mercy. I'm not so sure that came out right. Anyways, I think the seat on this bike is probably great for off-roading, but when it comes to munching miles, it definitely needs improvement. As for the Royal Enfield Hunter 350, all I can say is that my brother did the whole trip on it, there and back again, even though I repeatedly offered him to trade. He said it was very comfortable and he was enjoying the ride the whole time. It's not the fastest bike around, but it had no issues keeping up with the Tiger as long as we kept to the speed limit. According to the tracker on the Tiger, the trip was a grand total of 1,791 kilometers, which is 1,112 miles. We left the Hunter at the hotel a few times when heading to the racetrack, so it did around 300 kilometers or 200 miles less. I'll call the approximately 900 miles it did in 5 days a successful long-distance test ride for the little thumper. Now I can finally wrap up by saying that I had an absolutely great time, and judging by my brother's reaction to the whole thing, we might just make this an annual event. Time will tell. Hasta luego.